Have you ever wondered why some markets feel unfair, even though everyone is supposedly acting in their own self-interest? Why you keep getting the same choices, the same brands, and the same few companies everywhere you look? We were taught that capitalism, guided by the invisible hand, leads to prosperity. That if everyone acts in self-interest, the market automatically balances by itself. But what if it doesn't feel like balance anymore, and feels more like a trap? So what's gone wrong? To understand that, we need to go back to Adam Smith himself. It's the man who introduced the invisible hand and sparked the idea of modern capitalism. In the 18th century, Smith wrote the book The Wealth of Nations during a time when Europe was dominated by state-backed monopolies and mercantile empires. He believed in free markets, and he demanded real competition and real freedom of choice. But he was deeply suspicious of the possibility of monopolies. He warned that powerful merchants would collude, manipulate laws, and conspire against the public to raise profits. He saw how monopolies restricted trade and hurt both consumers and workers. He was also suspicious of backroom deals and the power of corporations to manipulate outcomes in their favor. He famously warned that people of the same trade seldom meet together. But the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public. How did his argument turn out? Let's talk about today's three major problems that Smith would predict: the illusion of choice, the collapse of bargaining power, and growing dependence on digital platforms. Have you noticed no matter how many brands you scroll through, whether it's food, clothes, or apps, they all somehow feel the same, different logos, same experience? What looks like variety is often just the same company behind different masks. That's the illusion of choice. Those brands are often owned by the same parent companies. What seems like competition is just a well-dressed monopoly. Different logos, same corporate boardroom. You're not really choosing. You're shuffling between subsidiaries of the same monopoly. Smith believed competition was what kept markets honest. Many small producers would force each other to lower prices, improve quality, and serve the public. But when just a few companies dominate a market, prices stop falling, and innovation slowly dies. Think about airline tickets, app stores, or online shopping. You can still choose, but the underlying structure is already rigged. And Smith warned us that once real competition disappears, so does your freedom. As Smith warned, without real competition, markets stop rewarding true value, like better quality, lower prices, or new ideas. Instead, they reward whoever controls the bottlenecks, sets the rules, or blocks others from entering. Now let's turn to the second problem: the collapse of bargaining power. Why does it feel like you no longer have a voice? Whether you're a customer trying to resolve an issue, a worker negotiating fair pay, or a small business dealing with a giant supplier, the marketplace once imagined as a space for negotiation and mutual exchange has shifted. In today's monopolized economy, power no longer balances across the table. It tilts heavily to one side. Smith envisioned a marketplace where people could freely negotiate each other, where buyers and sellers had some balance, and power was checked by competition, because multiple options kept everyone accountable. But when monopolies dominate, that balance collapses. They don't negotiate, they dictate. A company with no rivals doesn't need to hear your complaints, just sets the terms and watches you comply. If there's nowhere else to go, your voice doesn't matter. Think of renters dealing with giant corporate landlords who raise prices without discussion, or gig workers trying to negotiate with faceless platforms that control their schedules and rates. So-called contract isn't a conversation, it's a one-sided ultimatum. Even as customers, we accept endless terms of service, sudden price hikes, and silent algorithm changes. Not because we agree, but because we have no leverage. Not without bargaining power, as Smith would say. You're not a market participant anymore. You're just a subject. This inevitably leads us to the third crisis: growing dependence on digital platforms. Have you ever considered what would happen if the platform apps or websites you heavily rely on suddenly disappeared, or even turned against you? Imagine a small business that gets removed from the marketplace it depends on, or a content creator whose income vanishes after a sudden algorithm change. Years of work, visibility, and trust can be erased in an instant, without warning and with no way to fight back. For many creators, sellers, freelancers, or even students, these platforms aren't just tools, They're essential to your income, communication, and visibility. Whether you're building a store on a digital marketplace, teaching through an online course hub, or reaching audiences on a social app, you're building on rented ground. And when a policy changes, an algorithm hides your content. Your account is suspended without warning. Everything you've built can vanish overnight. There's no negotiation, just a notification. You don't just lose access. You lose your business, your reach, and often your identity. Smith never saw the internet coming, but he would have instantly recognized the power dynamic. When a platform grows so large that users, creators, and even entire businesses can't afford to leave, it no longer functions as a service. It becomes an authority. At that point, it doesn't compete for your loyalty. It dictates your options, controls your access, and reshapes your behavior. And just like the monopolies Smith warned us about, its power doesn't come from creating more value. It comes from making itself too big to ignore. So let's step back. Adam Smith warned that when monopolies take hold, markets no longer serve the public. They concentrate power, rewrite the rules, and manipulate the idea of choice, making it seem free while locking others out. The invisible hand doesn't vanish under monopoly. It gets hijacked. Instead of rewarding value, it protects the few at the top. And when no one can challenge them, monopoly becomes a silent ruler of markets. Smith's solution would be to restore true competition. Find ways to mitigate monopolies and reinforce open entry instead. Freedom in the market isn't just about buying. It's about having a real choice to walk away. So when someone celebrates free markets, ask, free for whom? If monopoly removes your choice, voice, and escape, it isn't freedom. Smith's warning still echoes. Unchecked power will always shape the game for itself. And his warning is more relevant now than ever. If this made you question the world around you, don't stop here. Please hit like, subscribe, and share, because understanding power is the first step to reclaiming it. Adam Smith saw it coming. Now it's your turn.